So how's your Advent going? I was talking to somebody recently, and she said to me, "Father, I don't know how to Advent. I'm good at Lent. I know what I'm supposed to do during Lent, but Father, I don't know how to Advent. It's like Thanksgiving comes, and then Advent kind of sneaks up on me, and then there's like Christmas festivities, like the parties and this and that, and before I know it, Christmas has come, Advent is gone, and I didn't even Advent at all." Does that sound familiar? How's your Advent? Last week, some of you were here at this Mass last week, some of you wasn't. But last week, we heard Jesus tell us not to let our hearts become drowsy through the anxieties of daily life. And we used the image of the candle, and we said that you could just blow out the candle. If the candle represents the life of God, God's grace living within us, you just blow out the candle, or you could just snuff it. You could take away all the oxygen, and the flame would just slowly, slowly die. And we said that for most of us, a lot of times, it's not the temptations to just snuff out our prayer life, to just snuff out our relationship with God, but it's that all these other things, these anxieties of daily life, get in the way. And last week we said that Advent is like a little Lent. It's not the same thing as Lent, but it's us preparing for something great. So what can we do to prepare for something great? I have to share with you that last week when I said that, I don't think that I exactly knew what I was supposed to do for Advent yet. And at some point, either later last Sunday or when I was in the chapel on Monday morning, I just remember being in the chapel on Sunday or on Monday, and I just knew that the first thing I needed to do for Advent was to fast on Wednesday and Fridays and not sleep at all. I'm just kidding. The first thing that I needed to do for Advent was to get enough sleep at night. That doesn't sound hard at all. I mean, that sounds hard to do, but I kind of like that idea. I think that sometimes we get into this, we get this idea that the spiritual life has to be painful. If I'm going to do something good, it has to be painful. And that's a lie. Sometimes it is. I mean, sometimes we're legitimately fasting, and that is very painful. Sometimes we receive this cross or that cross in our lives that we don't choose, like we choose to fast, but it's painful, and we're with Jesus in that, and Jesus is close to us in that, and that's real. But sometimes, too, there are these changes that we can make in our lives that might be difficult to do, but are actually kind of pleasant. So, praise God, by the hardest, I succeeded in getting enough sleep this week. And you know what I found? My prayer is actually more fruitful. As I was asking God for the grace to be more patient with the people I encounter in my life, I found that it's much easier to be patient. Even when traffic is crazy. Just because of one little thing. Little thing. So maybe you did like I did. Maybe God gave you some kind of little thing that you could do, and your life is just a little bit different today than it was last week. Maybe not. Maybe you forgot. hey, we still got a lot of Advent left. Where might God be calling you to greater focus on Him? It might be something hard, like fasting for the rest of the Fridays of Advent. It might be something easy to do, but nice to have done, like just having a discipline of getting enough sleep. Or it might be all kinds of things in the middle. But that's really just how we Advent. We take our focus off of the anxieties of daily life and we focus on the Lord. And I think, y'all, that fosters hope. I want to say something about the mountains and the valleys. Did you hear it in both the first reading and in the gospel? Prepare the way of the Lord, make His path straight. Every valley shall be filled, and every mountain and hill shall be brought low. What does that mean? Well, that means a lot of things. But one of the things that means is we don't want any barriers in our journey to God. And we don't want any barriers in God coming to save us. I don't want to put up any walls in front of God's work in my life. I don't want anything to stop me from going towards God. So we've got to fill up the valleys and knock down the mountains. Straighten the roads. I was thinking about the roads. So I heard a story from someone who grew up in Thibodeau, and he said, he's like 26 now, and he said for the past like 10 years or whatever since I started driving, every time I leave my parents' house to go down the bayou or to go to New Orleans, they always say, don't take 308. Take Highway 1. And why? Now, whether this person, who shall remain nameless, actually listens to his parents or not is a whole different story. Because 308 is faster. It also has a lot more curves in it. And people know that it's faster. It's a little more dangerous. I'll make straight the roads. I'll fill in the valleys so that you can more easily come to God. Because maybe you did. Maybe you are doing Advent well. Maybe you have whatever practices. Maybe you did double your prayer. Instead of praying for 5 minutes a day, you're praying for 10 minutes a day. Or instead of praying for 15 minutes a day, you're praying for 30 minutes a day. Or maybe you did more service, and maybe you've been to the food bank, or you've done whatever to help and to serve the poor. And maybe things are going on in your life that you've actually been doing Advent well. And now God is saying, okay, here's more. Okay, knocking down a mountain is hard. Filling in a valley is hard work. I prepared you for that by the little things. The more prayer, the getting enough sleep, the extra service. I prepared you for that. But I want to complete that work. I want more for you. So if that's where you are today, well, I am sure that He who began a good work in you will bring it to completion. That's Jesus. What's next? There's a couple more weeks in this time that we call Advent. And maybe now there's something bigger that you want for me. What's next? There's one of my favorite books is The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. It's a children's story, and if you have kids or if you have grandkids, like that's what you want to read to them. It's like The Chronicles of Narnia, and if you're a kid, I mean, I started reading that when I was in like the 3rd grade. So if you're a kid, hey, I go to the library and pick up The Chronicles of Narnia. And I'll spoil the ending for you, but it's still worth reading. At the end, everybody, actually not everybody, but lots of the characters go to heaven at the very, very end. And in heaven, they run, but they don't get tired. And they say, I imagine that if you could run and not get tired, you would hardly want to do anything else. And as they're running, and as they're going towards Jesus, and as they're going closer and closer and closer to Jesus, they say these words: further up and further in. Further up and further in. There's always more. God always wants better for us. More and more and more. And sometimes in this world, it is very difficult to get to the more. Sometimes we have all our hang-ups that prevent us from doing what we know is going to make us happy. Sometimes things in life kind of come down and burden us. But God always wants more. Perhaps more from you, but definitely always more for you and for me. So as we approach Christmas, I just want you to know, I'm going to be confident that there is more. Stay faithful to whatever practices that you started for Advent. Or if you didn't start any, start them now. Because God doesn't want this to be just like a normal Christmas for you, whatever that means. God wants to change your life, and He wants to change mine. So don't let the valleys, don't let the mountains, don't let the crooked streets get in the way. But do whatever it takes to receive more from Him.